suspect in major bus crash in深水埗. Standard & Poor's downgrades credit rating for Hong Kong. And Zhang Xiaoming vacates post at Beijing liaison office, replacing Wang Guangya as head Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office.
Good evening. We start with a developing story in深水埗tonight. There's been a serious accident involving a double-decker bus with dozens of people hurt. Police say the city bus E21A service crashed onto the sidewalk at an intersection between Cheungsha Road and Yanqiao Street at around 6:30 this evening. More than 20 people are reportedly injured, with at least 3 trapped underneath the bus. The service was heading to Homan Tin when the accident happened.
Well, in other news, Standard & Poor's has cut its credit rating for Hong Kong a day after downgrading China's sovereign rating, citing risks posed by the city's close ties to the mainland. Today, Beijing slammed the move as the wrong decision, while Hong Kong authorities have yet to respond. Jeff Tang reports.
Barely 24 hours after dropping China's sovereign credit rating down a notch for the first time in 18 years, Standard & Poor's turned its attention to Hong Kong. The US rating agency cut its long-term rating on the SAR by 1 notch from AAA to AA+. It explained that the city faces risks should there be an economic crisis across the border because of their strong institutional and political ties. But S&P lifted Hong Kong's outlook from negative to stable due to the city's solid fiscal reserves and credible monetary policy. The downgrade triggered an expected knee-jerk reaction in the stock market, with the Hang Seng Index closing down 0.8% at 27,880 points. It was the market's worst performance in a month, but it was far from a panic sell-off. Turnover was just $92.6 billion, the lowest amount the entire week, while the benchmark is still up more than 0.2% from last Friday's close. Yesterday, S&P lowered China's credit rating by 1 notch from AA- to A+, citing rapid credit growth. In Beijing, the Ministry of Finance bluntly dismissed S&P's move as a wrong decision and said the agency had ignored the country's economic strength. While it is still among S&P's highest ratings, the downgrade could make it more expensive for Beijing to borrow money, and the higher debt burden might drag on economic growth. There are also concerns the downgrade might impact investor sentiment, but mainland stocks have so far shown little signs of being affected. S&P's decision follows a similar downgrade by Moody's Investors Service in May. The timing is awkward for the ruling Communist Party, which wants to project an image of stability ahead of next month's twice-a-decade party congress. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
Beijing confirmed today the appointment of Zhang Xiaoming as head of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. His previous job as the central government's point man in Hong Kong will be taken over by the head of the Macau Liaison Office. Caleb Learn has details.
The announcement was issued by the State Council this afternoon. According to the statement, Zhang Xiaoming replaced the 67-year-old Wang Guangya as the new head of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. Wang was not assigned a new position. Meanwhile, Wang Zhimin was relieved of his position as the head of Beijing's liaison office in Macau. He was given his Hong Kong counterpart's post. Zheng Xiaosong, a vice minister in the International Department of the Communist Party's Central Committee, will become the new top Beijing representative in the enclave. Speaking to the press after the announcement was made, Wang said he hopes the Hong Kong government could focus on the economy as well as democratic development. Wang also praised the ability of his successor, saying that the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office will be better under Zhang's leadership. Zhang departed Hong Kong this morning and arrived in Beijing this afternoon. He met with Wang at the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. Before Zhang Xiaoming left for the airport this morning, staff at the central government's liaison office bid their farewells to the departing director. At the airport, Zhang confirmed he was leaving his post at the liaison office. Citing lyrics from a Chinese pop song, Zhang said he will always be around. Zhang also cited President Xi Jinping's speech during his earlier visit to Hong Kong, reminding Hong Kong people to believe in themselves, in Hong Kong, and in the country. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
A passenger plane at Cheplap-Kok was forced to brake abruptly as it was taking off this morning. That's because a cargo aircraft suddenly crossed its runway. The airport authority says it happened at around 9 a.m. The Hong Kong Airlines flight to Shanghai was preparing for takeoff when the pilot discovered another plane had just landed and was running across its path. Nobody was injured in the incident. It is understood at their closest point, the two planes were about 1,000 meters apart. The airport authority is investigating.
The Electrical and Mechanical Services Department says it will prosecute the Otis Elevator Company, an engineer and a registered escalator worker over a mishap involving one of the city's longest indoor escalators in March. 18 people were hurt when an escalator at Langham Place in Mong Kok suddenly stopped and reversed direction. The department said the accused had failed to conduct their statutory duties under the Lifts and Escalators Ordinance. It added that the decision to prosecute them was made after seeking advice from the Department of Justice. The case will be heard at Kowloon City Magistrates Courts on October the 27th.
Overseas, North Korea says it might test a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific Ocean. The remarks came after U.S. President Donald Trump authorized another round of sanctions in response to Pyongyang's nuclear weapons tests. But in a possible indication of more powerful weapons tests on the horizon, North Korea's leader has promised that Trump will pay dearly for his threats. In a week of high drama at the United Nations, the stakes in the North Korean standoff have been raised yet again. On the sidelines of the UN gathering, North Korea's foreign minister said his country might test a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific. Ri Yong-ho said such an H-bomb detonation would fulfill Leader Kim Jong-un's vow to take the highest level action against the U.S. Hours earlier, state media ran a dispatch from Kim promising to make mentally deranged U.S. dotard Trump pay dearly for his threats. In a new level of bombast, Kim was quoted as saying Trump was unfit to hold the supreme command of a country and described the president as a rogue and a gangster fond of playing with fire. The statement came after Trump's combative speech at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday, where he mocked Kim as a rocket man on a suicide mission. Trump said that if forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Then yesterday, Trump announced the latest steps to punish foreign companies that deal with the North until it halts the missile and nuclear tests.
Foreign banks will face a clear choice: do business with the United States or facilitate trade with the lawless regime in North Korea, and they won't have so much trade.
Japan and South Korea hailed the announcement as a new stage of pressure, unlike any before. Trump also said China is imposing major banking sanctions too, but there was no immediate confirmation from Beijing. If enforced, the new restrictions could severely impede Pyongyang's ability to finance its missile and nuclear development. China's foreign ministry today urged North Korea to stop persisting on its dangerous course. The foreign minister said negotiations are the only way out of the nuclear standoff.
The death toll in Tuesday's 7.1 magnitude earthquake in Mexico has risen to at least 282 as desperate rescue efforts continue. But in a bizarre twist, Mexico's Navy has apologized for giving untrue news about a 12-year-old girl who was supposedly trapped inside a collapsed school. Alan Buckner has more.
After more than a day of wall-to-wall coverage about the search for a girl in the rubble of Enrique Rebsamen School, the Navy changed its version of events and said all pupils are now accounted for. This spokesman admitted the Navy had been the source of the misinformation based on rescuers' reports. He said 19 children and 6 adults were killed in the school's collapse and 11 children were rescued. It's believed one teacher could still be trapped inside. The search for the girl named Frida had captured the hearts in a nation desperate for good news. As it became apparent that no child was trapped, there was an outpouring of anger on social media directed at the Navy. Meanwhile, backhoes and bulldozers started clearing away some wrecked buildings where no one had been detected, or where teetering piles of rubble threatened to collapse on neighboring structures. Officials were quick to say no building where people may still be trapped would be razed. So far, more than 60 survivors have been pulled out of collapsed buildings, and rescue dogs continue to aid in the search for more. The efforts are now on 10 buildings where people may be alive. More than 50 buildings collapsed in the city of 20 million. Residents in Mexico City remain in a state of shock. This woman says she was walking by buildings that have always been there but are now gone. She acknowledged that while the physical damage to the city will take years to sort out, the psychological damage done to many will probably take a lot longer to fix, if at all. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
London's Transport Authority says it won't renew Uber's licence to operate in the British capital. Transport for London says the car-hailing app was not fit and proper to hold a private hire operator licence. The authority argued that the company demonstrates a lack of corporate responsibility with implications in public safety and security. London Mayor Sadiq Khan said he supported the decision. Uber says it will appeal.
Chancellor Angela Merkel appears all but certain to win a fourth term when Germans vote this Sunday. Merkel, who's been chancellor for 12 years, has run a low-key campaign emphasizing the country's low unemployment, strong economic growth, balanced budget, and overall stability in a volatile world. Pre-election polls give her Conservative Union bloc a lead of 13 to 17 points over the center-left Social Democrats of her challenger Martin Schulz. The two are traditional rivals but have governed together in a grand coalition of the biggest party for the past 4 years.
Still to come tonight. 2 women arrested over fraudulent sale of mooncakes. Carrie Lam continues her hard sell of Hong Kong in the UK. And Chelsea agreed to sell striker Diego Costa back to Atletico Madrid.
Welcome back to TVB News. Mooncakes are in high demand right now with the Mid-Autumn Festival just around the corner. Police arrested 2 women on suspicion they scammed others while selling the pastries online. Omi Lung reports.
Mooncakes are dominating shop fronts as the city gets ready to celebrate Mid-Autumn Festival in less than 2 weeks. This mainlander crossed the border to Shui to stock up on the pastries, as he believes those produced in Hong Kong are of higher quality. For this man, it clearly wasn't enough to just get a box of mooncakes, but a carton full of them. The Chinese sweets, traditionally filled with lotus seed paste, can be found at local bakeries. Those offered by luxury hotels can cost more than $500 a box. Some simply couldn't resist when discounted mooncakes or mooncake vouchers became available on an online auction site. One of them even bought 3,000 vouchers in one go, but the goods never arrived. Police followed those complaints and arrested 2 24-year-olds in Tai Po and Tsingyi. They are believed to have cheated customers out of $115,000.
Obtaining property by deception is a serious offense. Offender will face penalty up to 10 years imprisonment upon conviction.
Police have not ruled out further arrests and urged the public to buy from reputable shops. Elmi Lo, TVB News.
The High Court began hearing arguments for a judicial review over the government's decision on joint border controls for the high-speed rail link to the mainland. 2 of the applicants are social worker Hendrik Lui and Kwok Chuk Kin. They're both represented by senior counsel Martin Lee. They say the government did not consult the public. The government's lawyer, Benjamin Yu, meanwhile, argued the proposal is still in its beginning stages and there are no grounds for a judicial review. The High Court will hand down a decision on Wednesday.
Secretary for Security John Lee, who was in Beijing today, met with the Deputy Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. He cited Wang Lichuan as saying the central government will not tolerate calls for independence. Lee told the Deputy Director that the SAR will deal with independence activities according to the law. Lee also met with law enforcement officials on how to tackle cross-border crimes like phone scams.
One undersecretary and 2 political assistants will be joining Carrie Lam's government. It was announced today that Raymond So, Dean of the School of Continuing Education at Baptist University, will become Undersecretary for Transport and Housing. A former principal reporter here at TVB News, Kenneth Ng, has been appointed political assistant to the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, while Henry Fung has been named political assistant to the Secretary for Labour and Welfare. Meanwhile, the chief executive was talking trade during day 2 of her visit to the UK. Carrie Lam told a business forum that she would make good on her election campaign promise to help Hong Kong's small and medium-sized enterprises.
Addressing more than 1,000 people from political and business sectors at a Trade Development Council forum in London, the CE showcased Hong Kong's business advantages for UK firms looking for opportunities in Asia. Carrie Lam also vowed to make good on her campaign promise to relieve the burden on small and medium-sized enterprises by introducing a 2-tier tax regime. That would entail the tax rate for the first $2 million of profits to be lowered from the current 16.5% to 10%.
We will introduce measures to make our tax system even more competitive by reducing tax burden on SMEs and startups through a 2-tier profits tax system and providing a high level of tax deductions to incentivize corporations to invest in R&D.
Lam added that she planned to hold a tax summit later this year to get more feedback and ideas. The CE then met with First Secretary of State and Minister for the Cabinet Office of the UK, Damien Green, and British Secretary of State for International Trade, Liam Fox. She told them Hong Kong continues to strengthen its status as an international business and financial centre, thanks to the support of Beijing and the One Country, Two Systems framework. The CE also attended a lunch hosted by the all-party Parliamentary China Group at the House of Commons to discuss housing, urban planning, smart city initiatives and heritage conservation. She later experienced some of London's arts and culture scene, with a tour of the Victoria and Albert Museum and a visit to an exhibition at the London Design Festival.
Thai police say a roadside bomb explosion in the country's insurgency-plagued south has killed 4 army rangers. The blast also wounded 5 other rangers and a civilian. Authorities said the soldiers were on a patrol in Patani province this morning when the pickup truck they were traveling in was struck by the blast. More than 6,500 people have been killed since a Muslim separatist insurgency flared in the country's 3 southernmost provinces in 2004.
China and Russia are taking part in a joint Navy exercise off the Sea of Japan. According to state broadcaster CCTV, both Navy ships left from a port in the Russian city of Vladivostok. It's the home port of the Russian Pacific Fleet and the largest Russian port on the Pacific Ocean. This round of drills is the second stage of joint military exercises between the 2 neighbours. The first round took place in July.
A small private jet with 4 people aboard ran off the runway and caught fire at Istanbul's international airport last night. All 4 people survived. Turkey's transportation ministry said the plane had taken off for northern Cyprus but turned back after a technical malfunction was detected. The jet's 2 pilots, a flight attendant, and 1 passenger were all able to make it off the jet on their own. They were hospitalized, but the injuries are not considered life-threatening.
Liliane Bettencourt, the L'Oreal Cosmetics heiress and world's richest woman, died in her home in Paris. She was 94. She inherited the L'Oreal fortune when her father died in 1957. When the company went public 6 years later, she maintained a majority stake. It generated almost 26 billion euros in sales last year. Her name was involved in a long-running scandal in France known as the Bettencourt affair. In 2007, her daughter filed a complaint accusing one of her mother's closest friends of manipulating the elderly widow into giving him artwork and cash. In 2015, François-Marie was sentenced to 3 years in prison for swindling Bettencourt of millions of euros by taking advantage of her weak mental state.